When Jesus is speaking here in the gospel saying, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest," it might perhaps be that he's talking about those who do physical labor, those who are heavily burdened by carrying heavy things. But it's perhaps a little bit more likely that he's talking, or more specifically focusing on those who are burdened by the law, by the Pharisees, with these heavy burdens that he's placing upon them to do all of these very small things, these minutiae of the law, in order to follow God. And he is saying that if you are feeling labored and burdened by the law of Moses, the law of Leviticus, then come to me and you will find rest. But I think it's also important to know that he's not saying that means there will be no more laws, or that you can do basically whatever you want. That's not what he's saying here either. When he is saying you will have rest, and he is saying, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, that yoke is a sign of work, that you still have work to do, you still have laws to follow. But when we do so in Christ, it makes a difference. And that law becomes not something that is burdensome, but something that is done out of love, and something that we can delight in doing in a new way. So think about you, and perhaps in your own homes. What kind of laws do you have that are maybe difficult to follow? Maybe what kind of rules do you have at home? Sometimes maybe it is you have a strict bedtime. You have to be in bed by a certain time, and maybe that's a hard one to follow, and maybe that's one you don't like to follow. And it might seem at times to be heavy and burdensome. And just like those Pharisees who put these laws on the people, they are saying, if you do these things are going to help you form your life in such a way that it's easier to follow God. But if they don't see that end result, if they don't see it as something to follow God, they just see it as something that you have to do, it becomes burdensome. And just like for you, if having a certain bedtime seems burdensome, and you don't realize what maybe your parents realize, that if you go to bed too late, or if you stay up too late, and then you don't get enough sleep, and you're tired and you're cranky the next day, and you're miserable company, and you make everybody else around you miserable, that's a worse outcome. And part of going to bed earlier is to say, or on time, is to say, I know this is best for me and for those around me. That it's not just focused on my selfishness, but it's focused on the good of all of us. And just like many of probably your parents and those adults in the room, what are some of the laws that maybe are difficult for you to follow? And I think for maybe a lot of people, one of those laws might be something like the speed limit. Sometimes it's very hard for people to follow the speed limit as a law, to see it as a limit and not just a general suggestion. What is the struggle in the heart? Is for many people is to say that I'm not focused on everybody else. I'm not focused on that reality that having a speed limit, having an agreed upon speed limit for a society is beneficial to keep us all working together in the safest way possible. I'm not focused on others. I'm not focused on that broader picture. I'm focused on myself. And I want to go fast. Or I don't want to spend more time in my car. And when we focus on ourselves, that law becomes burdensome. But in Christ and in his love, when we can see it as part of that bigger picture, in love, it becomes less burdensome. And it becomes now something that we would want to do. And even, again, one of those other laws that I imagine many of your parents would complain about is, paying taxes. And yes, that can be certainly an issue. But if we lived in a culture, if we lived in a society that was more righteous, where we knew that the taxes we paid were not going to go to support fraud or theft or greed, if we had righteous people in government and using that money righteously, we would probably be a lot less upset about paying taxes. And that is only possible in Christ. Jesus says, "Come to me," when the law seems burdensome. Come to me when you labor to try to do those things. It says, yes, they can maybe help you, form you to do good and to know God. But it is also good to come to God to know him, so that you might see in that law the good that is actually there. So let us come to the Lord. Let us encounter him and his love. And in doing so, be inspired to live in such a way, to carry out that love in the world, and to help others do so as well.